The first thing I saw was my backpack, lying on the grass, soaked from the rain, kicked off to one side. The strap was torn, the zipper gaped open, exposing a logo design I had made for a client but hadn't had the chance to send yet. Then I heard laughter. Not playful laughter, the kind of laughter that happens when people are watching a live stream and forget that the person on camera can still hear everything. My name is Rachel. I'm 27 years old, and that night I stepped out of my car straight into a live stream run by my own family, where I was playing the role of the Parasite being kicked out. I was still wearing my coffee shop uniform. My apron was stained with milk coffee from the afternoon shift. As I turned into the driveway, I saw my mother, Judy, holding her phone up, speaking into the camera like the host of a home makeover show. Here you go, everyone. 27 years old, living in the basement, and now she's finally out. Anyone want some old junk? Her eyes never landed on me. They were fixed on the comment section. My brother Colton kicked the box holding my laptop toward the curb. Look at this, still hanging on to that useless art crap. He laughed, then laughed louder. The microphone caught the soft ripping sound of paper as my sketches were torn apart. Harper, my younger sister, tilted her phone and slowly spun it around, filming like she was doing a house tour vlog. Holiday cleanup, getting rid at the Parasite. Clean girl aesthetic, everyone. I didn't say a word. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I walked over to the torn plastic bag, picked up my rain-soaked laptop, and gently wiped the mud from the edge of the keyboard. The drawings were smeared, the ink bleeding into the paper. I folded them carefully and slid them back into the bag, wrapped in a silence that felt almost painful. Across the street, a neighbor stood watching, phone in hand, a smirk on his face. I didn't look closely at who it was. I only knew this. The last time I walked away from this house, I was still a daughter trying to stand back up after a career collapse. This time, I was leaving as if I had never belonged there at all. I loaded my things into the car, closed the trunk, and drove away. No one stopped me. They thought they had just gotten rid of a burden. They thought that video would be shared everywhere. They thought I would lose control, make a scene, and give them even more content for the next live stream. But what they didn't know was this. 6 months later, I would be the one sending them an email that none of the three of them would dare read out loud. And what they really didn't know was that for the past 4 years, I had been a co-owner of the very house they were living in, the shop they were drowning in debt over, and the rental apartment they had been collecting money from without ever giving me a single dollar. The Parasite they thought they were throwing away was actually the one with the final voice. I didn't tell anyone about that night for the first 3 days. Not because I was ashamed, but because I needed to be sure that what I had just lived through was real. Not a nightmare I would wake up from in the familiar basement room, hearing my mother bang on the pipes like she always did. I stayed at Vanessa's place, a small apartment that smelled of old paint and burnt coffee, but no one there looked at me with pity. Vanessa simply pulled me inside, handed me a dry towel, and said, "Stay here. Tell me when you're ready." On the first night, I lay on the couch and opened my phone. The live stream video had already been taken down, but it was too late. An old friend had managed to send me a screen recording in time. I watched it from beginning to end, no skipping, no muting. I watched my mother call me a parasite in a calm, steady voice. I watched my brother laugh. I watched my sister read the comments and nod along to every line written by strangers who had never met me, yet felt perfectly comfortable judging my entire life in a matter of seconds. Strangely, I didn't cry. I just felt cold. 3 days later, I went back to the house when I knew no one would be home. I needed my personal documents, my passport, my birth certificate, the things that, without them, I wouldn't be able to do anything at all. The house felt emptier than I remembered. not because I was gone, but because everything suddenly felt fake. I opened the drawer where my mother usually kept paperwork. A stack of old letters slipped out, brown envelopes, faded postmarks. My name was on them. Rachel Mitchell. I froze. Inside wasn't a bill. It was a copy of a will. My grandfather's name was printed clearly at the top. I remembered it vaguely years ago at his funeral when a lawyer handed my mother a thick folder and said there were a few things that would need to be handled later. Back then, my mother told me everything had already been settled, that my grandfather hadn't left anything important, that I shouldn't worry. I believed her. I sat down on the kitchen floor and began reading page after page. The more I read, the faster my heart beat, not from pain, but from something else entirely. Something cold, but painfully clear. I was a co-owner. Not a symbolic share, not a token amount. I owned 45% of this house, 35% of Colton's phone repair shop, and 50% of a rental apartment on the outskirts of the city. Everything was spelled out. Signatures, official stamps, dates. There was no room for misunderstanding. I thought of every time my mother complained about money, every time she said she was carrying me on her back, every time she reminded me that I was living off her. I remembered the rent envelope she brought home every month. I remembered the way she called it money she managed to scrape together. I sat there for a long time, not angry, not shaking, just a slow, steady clarity spreading through my body, as if someone had finally turned on the light in a room I had been living in, half darkness, for years. That evening, I told Vanessa everything. She didn't interrupt while I spoke. Only when I placed the stack of papers on the table did she take a deep breath. They didn't just insult you. They lived off your share. I didn't answer. I was thinking about the live stream, about how if I wanted to, I could do the exact same thing. I could turn on a camera, read every line of the will, name every name, and let the entire world see the truth. But I didn't. Not because I was noble, but because I knew my family. They lived on noise, on spectacle, on controlling how other people saw the story. If I stepped into that arena, I would lose, even if I was right. I called the number listed on the will. The lawyer picked up almost immediately, as if she had been waiting for this call for a long time. Her voice was calm, clear, not surprised. "We need to talk, and this isn't a conversation for the phone." I hung up, set the phone down, and for the first time since the night my life had been thrown into the trash, I smiled. Not a happy smile, but the smile of someone who had just realized she was never as small as she had been taught to believe. While my mother thought she had erased me from that house with a live stream, what she had really done was push me out of the role she had assigned me for years. And when you're no longer trapped in someone else's role, you begin writing your own story. In the next chapter, I won't appear on camera, but my name will appear on documents they can't delete. I arrived at the law office on a Wednesday morning. The sun was out, but it wasn't warm. The building stood quietly in the heart of Chandler, painted a pale yellow. Its worn sign hung between ads for a dentist, a tax office, and a sandwich shop. The secretary led me into a small room with an old wooden table and 2 cups of coffee already poured. Attorney Thompson, a woman in her 60s with short gray hair and a charcoal blazer, looked at me like someone who had read the file long ago and was simply waiting for the other person to catch up. "I honestly thought you'd never call," she said, not accusing. I sat down. So did I. We spoke for an hour and a half. I told her about the night my things were thrown onto the lawn, about the live stream, about being called a parasite. She didn't look surprised, just jotted notes with quiet precision. When I finished, she slid a thick folder toward me. "This," she said, "is everything you should have known 4 years ago, but your mother requested to delay the distribution, claiming you were mentally and financially unstable." I let out a laugh, not bitter, just hollow. So what rights do I actually have now? I asked. She opened the first page. More than they think. For the next 2 weeks, I moved like a machine. Freelance design by day to keep income flowing. At night, I dug through old emails, tax records, lease contracts, and bank statements. Every time I found a transaction where my mother had pocketed rents from the apartment in her name, I marked it in red. Every store maintenance bill Colton paid, while ignoring my stake, I screenshotted. I didn't post anything, didn't write angry threads, didn't cry to anyone. I let silence become my evidence. On the 10th day, I sent one single email to all three of them, my mother, Colton, and Harper. Subject: Notice of asset ownership per Mr. Mitchell's will. Body: I legally own 45% of the house you currently live in, 35% of the phone shop Colton operates, 50% of the rental unit in San Juan. Requests: reimbursement of $17,000 in unpaid rental income, transfer of shared assets into third-party management, cease using my name or likeness on social media for content, a formal, lawyer-present family meeting to negotiate. I sent the email at 9:15 a.m. At 9:28, Harper texted first. Are you insane? Who sends legal threats to their own family? Who taught you to be this cold? At 9:40, Colton called. I didn't pick up. 8 missed calls, 1 voicemail. You think having paperwork makes you hot shit? You're still a leech. At 9:55, my mom emailed back, all caps. Can't believe you'd betray family over a few pieces of paper. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded the entire chain to Miss Thompson, including the texts, the voicemails, the furious emails, and the archived livestream. Not to sue, not yet, but to prove that if they refused to negotiate, I had every legal right and more than enough evidence. 1 week later, I received a formal invitation to attend a private family meeting at the real estate office, the very same one where my mother had once falsely signed herself as the sole owner. I arrived 10 minutes early, sat in the waiting room, looked around. No live stream cameras, no phones raised, no TikTok background music. Only cold air and a lineup of faces no longer smug like the day they stood in the yard calling me dead weight. Miss Thompson entered, nodded at me, opened her folder. The fight was about to begin, but there would be no yelling, no crocodile tears for the camera, just ink, numbers, and black print on white paper, the kinds they couldn't tear, couldn't filter, and couldn't re-record. I had stayed silent for a long time. Now it was the truth's turn to speak. I sat at the head of the meeting table, the folder neatly placed in front of me. My chair angled slightly so that the light struck the side of my face, not because I wanted to look good on camera, but out of old habit, from the days when I used to paint portraits. My mother entered first, a purple floral dress, thick foundation, crimson lipstick slightly cracked at the corners, as if she had just cried or carefully constructed the illusion that she had. Colton came in next, wrinkled shirt, tie undone, a dazed look in his eyes like he hadn't slept enough. Harper was last, heavy perfume, phone in hand, screen still lit. I caught a glimpse of the TikTok app running in the background. None of them looked at me. Attorney Thompson gave a small nod, then began. Thank you for coming. Today we'll be reviewing asset ownership as outlined in Mr. Mitchell's will. I opened my folder, pulled out the notarized original copy of the will, and slid it across the table toward my mother. She didn't take it, just frowned. I've never seen this before, she said. But your signature is on page 6, I replied. Colton let out a mocking laugh. Even if this thing is real, so what? You've been living off Mom for years. You don't deserve anything. I calmly turned the document to the supporting section, rental statements from the apartment left by my grandfather, the same one they'd been collecting rent from for 3 years without giving me a cent. I haven't lived off anyone, I said. I just haven't claimed what's mine. Harper tapped her fingernail on the table. What is this? Some kind of stunt? Trying to shame the family online for sympathy? I shook my head. I haven't posted anything, and I don't need sympathy. I looked her straight in the eyes. I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm not a shadow you get to erase. The room fell into a long silence. Miss Thompson continued, evenly, "If the three of you refuse to negotiate, we will proceed with legal action under inheritance law and financial fraud." She opened another file. Forged rental contracts, property liens, all signed without my name. Colton slammed his hand on the table. "We're your family." "Family doesn't live stream each other's humiliation," I said. My voice wasn't raised, but every word landed. My mother began to cry. For the first time that day, she looked at me, eyes wet, lips trembling. You can't do this to me. I didn't mean to. I was just tired." I didn't respond right away. I remembered, with painful clarity, the night she called me a parasite in front of thousands of viewers, the moment I bent down to pick up my laptop in the rain. I didn't need another apology. I needed them to understand. Actions have consequences, whether they're recorded or not. Finally, Harper broke the silence. "What do you want?" I looked up, and for the first time since the meeting began, I smiled. "I want 3 things," I said. 1, legal recognition of my ownership over the assets stated in the will. 2, all income from those assets to be distributed according to the proper percentages, managed by a neutral third party from now on. And 3, I turned to my mother. No one in this family is allowed to mention my name online. No posts, no images, no stories, no subtle references, no tragedies with me in the center. Silence swept across the room. I stood, pushed my chair in, and straightened my sleeve. That's all I want. No more, no less. Colton clenched his jaw. Harper tapped on her phone. My mother bowed her head. Miss Thompson closed the meeting. We expect a formal written response within 7 days. As I walked out, the afternoon light streamed through the window, casting a long beam across the floor. I didn't look back. I didn't need a live stream, didn't need to drop evidence, didn't need to shout so the internet could decide who was right or wrong. All I needed was the law to acknowledge that I existed. And them? They would have to live with the truth. The thing they threw in the trash turned out to be the one holding their future in her hands. I received the confirmation email just 3 days after the meeting. Colton agreed to transfer 35% ownership of his phone store, not out of goodwill, but because my attorney made it clear. If he didn't, the court would seize and liquidate everything during litigation. Harper deleted every video, every post, every story that mentioned me. She even wrote a vague apology about a family misunderstanding. She never used my name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. As for my mother, she said nothing. No email, no phone call. But an old neighbor told me she had to sell her SUV to repay the rent money I had requested. The house was also up for sale. I didn't feel satisfied when I heard that. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt empty. I thought that being vindicated would feel like victory, but it didn't. It felt more like finally stepping off a stage that someone else had forced you to perform on for years. I moved to Tucson, a smaller city, warmer, less windy, and most importantly, no one there knew me as the daughter who got kicked out on Livestream. I worked freelance full-time. The studio I rented was small, but it had enough light for me to paint. The cactus on the windowsill thrived, even though I often forgot to water it. Sometimes I still dream. Not nightmares, just emptiness. I'm standing in my old house looking at a mirror. My reflection is blurred. No one sees me. No one calls my name. Then I wake and see my real face in a real mirror, clear, undeleted. One afternoon, a package arrived, no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter, ink slightly smudged, and an old photo of me as a child, sitting on my grandfather's lap, laughing. Below it, written in careful handwriting, "There will always be a place for you in this home, if you want it." It was from my mother. I folded the letter, slipped it into a file with the original will and the transfer papers, didn't tear it, didn't respond. I didn't go back. Not because I hated them, but because I had learned something. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning. Sometimes forgiveness is walking away and letting them face the space they created when they erased you. Now, every time I hear someone being called a parasite, I don't scoff anymore. I understand. Sometimes the cruelest words aren't insults. They're the fear of people who are losing control. And when they can no longer manipulate you, they scream the ugliest things just to make you stay. Don't stay. Walk. And if you've ever been erased from your family's picture, kicked out through a live stream, or torn apart by a phrase that sounded harmless but cut like a blade, know this: you are not alone. Leave a comment below, share your story, and if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video and don't forget to subscribe to Still Waters Payback. Because sometimes you don't need to scream to get revenge, you just need the truth and let it speak.